going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. And coming up on today's show, we're going to be breaking down a particular ESPN article written by Seth Walder. He did a great job of breaking down what he views as his grades for all 32 teams in the NFL as far as their offseason went. And he really was not particularly high on the Cincinnati Bengals. I get his reasoning, I get his logic, but we're kind of going to break down exactly what he had to say here on today's show. So make sure you stick around throughout the entirety of today's video. Plenty of good stuff from Seth Walder that we will be breaking down. Before we get to Walder's breakdown on the Cincinnati Bengals, I want to hear from you guys. Grade the Cincinnati Bengals offseason in the comment section of today's show. A, B, C, D, or F. You let me know what you guys think. Really curious to want to know what you guys think. Obviously, there has been some really good things that have happened this offseason and probably some things that were like, well, we wish this would have happened or this hasn't yet happened yet. I think you know what I'm talking about at this point, but regardless, sound off for me in the comment section of today's show. And of note, doing a little solo producing here on today's video, so if you see me look down, whatever the case may be, just trying to do multiple things here at once as we progress through today's show. All right, let's get to the bottom end of these grades from Seth Walder in regards to where he has some of these teams graded out. He's got the Cincinnati Bengals there at a C+, and the worst grade, as you can see, he gave to the New Orleans Saints at a D. He did not fail anybody. The Saints were his worst grade there at a D. Do want to make note that there were three other teams that he had at that C+ spot with the Cincinnati Bengals: the Green Bay Packers, the New England Patriots, and the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, there's some things that the Bengals have done, or not done, I should say, this offseason that are very frustrating for myself, and I'm sure much of the fan base as well. But considering some of the things they have gotten done, C+ seems a bit harsh in the fact that it's tied down there around that 25 ranking as far as the rest of the league goes. I find that a little bit hard to believe. All right, let's talk about what exactly he had to say at the top of his piece. So for all the teams, he gave out his biggest move, the move he liked the most, and then the move that he disliked the most. And for the Cincinnati Bengals, the biggest move obviously was extending Ja'Marr Chase, right? You break all the records with Chase, his contract, you had to do it. He won the Triple Crown. He deserves it. I don't think anybody really has an issue with that. And that was also his most liked move as well, as it should be for all of us. If anybody says, what's your favorite move this offseason? Every single Bengals fan should say, yeah, we paid Ja'Marr Chase. That's the answer to the question. And the move he disliked the most is no deal for Trey Hendrickson. Again, I think most fans would probably be in the same situation and kind of in the same boat as far as that goes. Now, his biggest things that when he was knocking the Cincinnati Bengals was the Trey Hendrickson situation and the Shemar Stewart situation. Two very critical things, I might add. So I totally get it where he's coming from with the C+. Especially when we'll get into a little bit of some of the reasoning from Walder here in a second. But as we all know, the Bengals had the ability to pay Trey Hendrickson. They just have not done it as far as the salary cap shapes up. Overall, I thought it was a fair critique, all right, from Seth Walder. I would have the Bengals graded a little bit better considering some of the things that they have done this offseason. But I get it. No Hendrickson, the Shemar Stewart fiasco, no new safeties, kind of seemingly running it back with a lot of the same pieces defensively. I get it. Definitely not an A offseason by any stretch of the imagination. But I will say the Chase and Higgins deals, they're being undervalued. All right, this is an organization that has struggled getting things done. And the fact that they got both of those done early, incredible. And I think also he isn't fully understanding how critical it was to get the T. Higgins deal done. And certainly doesn't appreciate it as much as he should. And I think maybe there's some people out there nationally that feel like Cincinnati's making a mistake paying T. Higgins. And I don't think he necessarily thinks it's a mistake, but as we'll get into, I think he thinks that Cincinnati is paying him a little bit too much. I disagree with that sentiment. What's your confidence level with the Bengals going into the season? How do you feel, right? I mean, you got Joe Burrow, the guy that was the best quarterback in the NFL last year. You got him back. You got the best receiver in the NFL. T. Higgins is signed. Offensively, Gesicki's back, right? You added a little help to the offensive line. Probably still not in the spot you wanted to be in. But overall, you did a lot of good things offensively. You made some changes defensively, but, a lot of coaching changes as well. What's your confidence level in Cincinnati? Are you feeling, this team that's going to compete for the Super Bowl 10? Or is it a team where you're like, yeah, it's going to be like last year. They're going to score a ton of points, but probably going to lose a lot of ball games because their defense isn't that good. Regardless, sound off for me in the comment section of today's show. All right, so let's get into what he had to say about Ja'Marr Chase. Because, again, this is the most critical thing that has happened here this offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals. They paid Ja'Marr Chase, and I'm just glad that it didn't take as long as certainly it could have ultimately with paying Jamar Chase, your best wide receiver, the best wide receiver in the National Football League. This is what Walder said. He said, let's address the receivers first. Coming off a season in which he led the league with 1,700 receiving yards on 127 receptions, Chase was certainly going to get the raise he deserved, but he really got paid. Sometimes when players receive record-breaking contracts, it's a product of natural progression, moving in a line with the cap's rise. This was not that. Chase's $40.25 million APY extension is the highest in OverTheCap.com's historical wide receiver contract list, even if we adjust for salary cap inflation. End of the day, Walder was basically saying, absolutely, Cincinnati needed to go out there and pay Jamar Chase, pay him the big bucks, and that's exactly what they did. And Walder's happy that they did that, again, as should everybody else here that watches the Cincinnati Bengals and is a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now we get to T. Higgins. It's seemingly, based on the article, Walder was saying, yeah, I think it was the right move to keep him, but he alluded to the fact that maybe they gave him a little bit too much. Well, there's a market, right? T. Higgins wasn't just going to, take some massive cut. No, he was going to get paid what he deserves to get paid, and that is what the T. Higgins deserves to get paid based on the market. And if you guys remember, obviously, the Bengals, they did this contract with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at the same time. Really thought it was brilliant work by them. Walter's sitting there saying, yeah, I would have paid him, but not as much. Well, it doesn't work like that, right? They needed to make T. Higgins happy after all that they had brought him throughout his career to this point, and they needed to give him the money that he deserved, and they ultimately did just that. So that, to me, was probably one of the more head-scratching parts about this piece, was when he was like, yeah, I think they should have paid him, but maybe not that much. It doesn't work like that. That was the value for T. Higgins. They wanted to keep him, and they did what was required in order to keep him. Let me know what you guys think, though. Did the Bengals overpay for T. Higgins? Sound off for us in the comment section of today's show. Type A for yes or B for no down in the comments and sound off for us. Next big point here in the article is something that we have been hammering home here for quite some time. The Bengals can afford to pay Trey Hendrickson. That's not the issue. For whatever reason, they don't want to pay him the number that Hendrickson wants right now. Probably good reasons, right? Considering the age, of course, of Hendrickson, and probably thinking that he's not going to be able to continue playing at the level in which he is currently playing right now. I get it. But let's take a look at what Seth Walder had to say. He said, sure, one could argue that the Bengals shouldn't jump to pay a huge amount to a 30-year-old pass rusher. But they're contenders, and he's a critical piece of that puzzle. And Cincinnati easily has the cap space to do it. It has $33 million available this year and $56 million available in 2026. The Bengals ought to be locking Hendrickson in to try to make a title run. I don't know the exact circumstances, but if this is a cash flow issue, I have little sympathy. Ownership's job is to try to field a winning team. In the hard cap revenue sharing NFL, teams must be able to pay to the cap. And I think Cincinnati has the ability to pay to the cap, but for whatever reason, they don't want to do it when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. And part of the reason is they feel like they did a great job with this contract, which they did. The fact that they have him on the contract, they currently have him, is great work by the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, does he deserve more? Absolutely. 17.5 sacks back-to-back seasons. That warrants a pay raise. But he's under contract. And if they want to hardball him here, they're in a position to be able to do that. And also, they're probably sitting there thinking, well, he's 30. He had 17.5 sacks back-to-back years. Are we just going to give this guy a ton of money and be the fourth massive contract on our books? Higgins, Chase, Burrow, and then Hendrickson? Or do we just make him go one more year, and then we see where we're at after this year? And if he's still playing at that level, maybe we'll give him a deal. Or if not, thanks for your service. It was great. We'll save some money, and we'll head in a different direction, especially with a guy like Jamar Stewart, a guy in which you drafted. So it's a very delicate game here being played by the Cincinnati Bengals. We will see. I think a lot of us as humans are like, yeah, we like Hendrickson. He's good, and he gets sacks. Go pay him. But the Bengals are like, well, technically he needs to play for us regardless, and he's getting up there in age, so if we can avoid giving out a massive contract, we're going to try to do that here, and unfortunately it's at the expense of Trey Hendrickson. But obviously we've talked about that a lot this offseason. That's just kind of the situation right now. Again, I think the C-plus grade, if they had paid Hendrickson as well, you might see him have an A grade, but a lot of people nationally are frustrated saying he's a great player, you're trying to win a title, what are you doing? Just pay the guy. I totally get it. Will the Bengals pay Trey Hendrickson? Sound off for us in the comment section of today's show. Type Y for yes or N for no. A couple more points before we get out of here on today's show. He totally agrees with the firing of Lou Anarumo, basically saying, hey, yeah, change needed to happen, and they went out and made the change. Love Lou Anarumo. Love what he did for this football team. You see even in the quarterback documentary, Joe Burrow clearly loves him as well, but it wasn't good the past 2 years, and you have too many good players, great players on this football team to have that bad of a defense. Change needed to be made. I think they got the right guy in Al Golden. And he also, as we touched on, admitted that they were dinged a little bit for the Shamar Stewart situation as far as their grade goes at a C+. That factored into it. Basically, he was like, yeah, it's a bad look for the organization to have to be going through this with a first-round pick. I totally get it. It's unfortunate that it is coming to play out this way. But again, not to just take the side of the Cincinnati Bengals, but from what I've heard, the agent of Shamar Stewart is getting a little wacky in terms of doing what he's doing. What the Bengals are asking here, yeah, they're trying to set a new precedent for their team, but it's very common across the rest of the league. So I don't think, as I mentioned a bunch before, I don't think Cincinnati definitely is necessarily 100% in the wrong here. If I had to pick who is more in the wrong, Stewart's team or the Bengals, I would pick Stewart's team. That's kind of the synopsis there from Walder in regards to why he gave that C+ grade for the Cincinnati Bengals this offseason.